Hello class, today we will be looking at Chapter 8, Personal Finance, Section 8.7, the cost of home ownership. Now our objectives today are to compute the monthly payment and interest cost for a mortgage, prepare a partial loan amortization schedule, prepare a loan amortization schedule using a spreadsheet, and solve problems involving what you can afford to spend for a mortgage. We need to understand the pros and cons of renting versus buying. Now, let's start with some definitions here. A mortgage is a long-term installment loan for the purpose of buying a home. The down payment is the portion of the sale price of the home that the buyer initially pays to the seller. The amount of the mortgage is the difference between the sale price and the down payment. Now, there are two types of mortgages. We have the fixed rate mortgages that have the same monthly payment during the entire time of the loan, and we have the variable rate mortgages, also known as adjustable rate mortgages. And they have payment amounts that change from time to time depending on changes in the interest rate. So, let's look at the computations involved with buying a home. Most lending institutions require the buyer to pay one or more points at the time of closing. That is, the time at which the mortgage begins. A point is a one-time charge that equals 1% of the loan amount. For example, 2 points means that the buyer must pay 2% of the loan at closing. A document called the Truth in Lending Disclosure Statement shows the buyer the APR for the mortgage. In addition, lending institutions can require that part of the monthly payment be deposited into an escrow account, an account used by the lender to pay real estate taxes and insurance. Now, let's look at the loan payment formula for fixed installment loans. The regular payment amount, PMT, required to repay a loan of P dollars paid N times per year over T years at an annual rate R is given by PMT equals P times R over N divided by 1 minus 1 plus R over N to the N minus T. Should look kind of familiar. We've used similar formulas in the past. Alright, so let's look at example 1 for computing the monthly payment and interest cost for a mortgage. The price of a home is $315,000. The bank requires a 10% down payment and 2 points at the time of closing. The cost of the home is financed with a 30-year fixed rate mortgage at 4.5%. Let's find the required down payment. Let's find the amount of the mortgage. Let's find how much must be paid for the 2 points at closing. Let's find the monthly payment excluding escrowed taxes and insurance. And let's find the total interest paid over 30 years. Let's break it down one at a time. Now, the required down payment is 10% of the $315,000. Now that $315,000 is just the price of the home, and the 10% is the down payment on the home right there. So all we're trying to do for part A is find the down payment. So we're multiplying the 10% times the $315,000 at the home cost. So 10% times $315,000 is $31,500. Now part B, it asks us to find the amount of the mortgage. Okay. So the amount of the mortgage is the difference between the price of the home and the down payment. So the amount of the mortgage is the sales price minus the down payment. So if the sales price was $315,000, we subtract the down payment, which we already calculated to be $31,500, and we're left with a mortgage amount of $283,500. Now part C, to find the cost of 2 points on a mortgage of $285,500, we're going to find 2% of $283,500. Okay, all we're doing here is this is how much must be paid for the 2 points at closing. You don't multiply the 2 points at closing times the whole cost of the house, the $315,000. You only have to pay the 2 points at closing on the actual mortgaged amount. The mortgaged amount here was the $283,500. So we multiply 2% times $283,500, and looks like we have to pay $5,670. So the down payment of $31,500 is paid to the seller, and the cost of 2 points, the $5,670, is paid to the lending institution. All right. Now, we need to find the monthly mortgage payment for $283,500 at 4.5% for 30 years. So you ask yourself, what was D asking again? We'll review. D was asking for us to find the monthly payment excluding escrow and taxes and insurance. Okay, so all we're doing is finding the monthly mortgage payment. That's what we're doing in Part D. We're going to take what we mortgaged, the $283,500. We found that in the previous part. Okay, our mortgage rate. You ask, where'd the 4.5% come from, Mr. Shipes? 4.5% was given in the problem. Okay, so flip back to the problem. Let's see if I can get my pen to work. Does my pen want to work today? Pen does not seem to want to work. Oh, that's why. It was unplugged. So the 4.1%, you can see it right there in the problem. I'm trying to get my pen to work real quick. It decided to tap out on me. But it's working now. So the 4.5% is right there in the problem. So for Part D, all we're going to do is we're going to use that formula we gave you, that PMT formula, right? We're going to plug in the P, which is the principal, which is the amount that we are basically borrowing from the lending institution, the $283,500. We're going to multiply it times the R over N, so the rate, which is the 4.5% that I underlined in the problem, over the number of times we're paying per year, which is 12, because we're paying monthly on our mortgage. Okay, that's where the 12 comes from. 12 is your monthly payment here. And remember, the 4.5 here is just your rate. Okay, divided by 1 minus 1 plus your rate over the number of times per year, so 0.045 divided by 12, raised to the number of times per year, 12, times 30, because this is a 30-year loan. So that's the number of years. And that's directly from the problem too. You can go back and look. That gives us a monthly payment here of $1,436. So the monthly mortgage payment for principal and interest is approximately $1,436. Now, we want to look at the total cost of the interest over 30 years. Okay, and the total cost of the interest over 30 years, because that's what Part E asked for, is equal to the difference between the total of all monthly payments and the amount of the mortgage. The total of all monthly payments is equal to the amount of monthly payments multiplied by the number of payments. So, in Part D, we found that our monthly payment here was $1,436. Okay, that is our monthly payment, and we're paying 12 payments a year, and we're paying for 30 years. Okay, so that's where we break this down. Okay, so if we're paying 12 payments a year for 30 years, we're paying 360 payments overall. That's where that 360 comes from. That's the number of payments we're making. The 12 payments a year for 30 freaking years. Long time, right? You can get different rate loans too. You can get different rates. You can get different periods. You can get 10-year loans, 15-year loans, 20-year loans, 30-year loans. Sometimes they even let you go out to 40 and 45. But this loan here is 30 years. Okay, 30 years is a common year loan for houses, especially expensive ones. But that's beside the point. So all we have to do now is multiply the number of payments we have here times our monthly payment. Our monthly payment we found in Part D was $1,436. We're multiplying that by the total number of payments we have here, which is 360, and now we see that we have $516,960 that we're paying over the lifetime of that loan. So this comes straight from that multiplication we was working on the other page. Okay. Now, we take that total amount that we have paid over the lifetime of this loan and subtract it from what the actual house cost when we bought it, right? How much we mortgaged, I guess you would say. $283,500. That's the amount mortgaged. So this is amount mortgaged. And we're subtracting that from the total cost. after payments. For 30 years. And what we see is we have paid $233,460 in interest over that 30-year period. That's crazy, right? So you almost paid the same amount as what you borrowed over that 30 years. So the total interest paid over 30 years is approximately $233,460. So think about that. You mortgaged a $315,000 house for 30 years. You put your down payment down, paid your points and whatnot. Okay, so you wound up mortgaging an amount of $283,500 for 30 years. And you wound up paying an additional $233,460 in interest over that 30-year period. Just let those numbers float with you a little bit. Home ownership can be expensive. That is for sure, especially if you finance it. All right, so let's look at the loan amortization schedules. When a loan is paid off through a series of regular payments, it is said to be amortized, which literally means killed off. Although each payment is the same, with each successive payment, the interest portion decreases and the principal portion increases. A document showing the important information about the status of the mortgage is called a loan amortization schedule. So we want to prepare a loan amortization schedule for the first 2 months of the mortgage loan shown in the following table. So here's the information about our mortgage loan in the table. Our annual rate is 5.5%. The amount of mortgage is $210,000. The monthly payment is $1,715.88. And the number of monthly payments is 180. The term of this loan is 15 years. Okay, so let's prepare this amortization schedule. Okay, so in order to do this, let's break it down. Okay, so we will begin with payment number 1. The interest for the month is going to be your PRT. We're going to take that $210,000 that we're borrowing right there. Remember, it's at 5.5%. We're going to multiply that times 0.055, and then we're going to multiply that by 1/12. Okay, that's going to give us $962.50. Okay, that's the amount of interest for that particular month. Now, the principal payment is going to be your monthly payment minus your interest payment. Okay, so that leaves us with $1,715.88. That is our monthly payment. It says it right there in the table. That's one of the pieces of information that's given right here. Okay. Now we're going to subtract that interest payment from that monthly payment, and what we see is that our principal payment, the payment that actually goes towards paying the loan down, is $753.38. So the majority of our monthly payment, for our first payment at least, is going towards interest on the home and not actually paying the home off. So the balance of the loan actually equals the principal balance minus the principal payment. So that $1,715.88 does not get taken off of your loan each month. Only the principal amount does. And the principal amount is only a fraction of what you're paying each month. That's what they want you to see here. Okay, so we take that $210,000 that's in principal, and we subtract our principal payment here that we calculated to be $753.38, and we see that after our first payment here, we still owe $209,246.62. Okay. Now, in order to calculate the next payment, we're going to start with a loan balance of $209,246.62, what we are left with after the first payment, and we're going to repeat these computations for the second month. So we got to look at the interest for the month, which is your PRT. So your principal times your rate times your time. So your $209,246.62 that was left on your principal after your first payment times your 5.5% interest times the 1/12 because we're paying a month at a time. Okay, that's going to give us the interest for second month, which is $959.05. That's the amount of interest that comes out of our second month payment. Okay. Now, if I compare that to our first month payment, you could tell the interest for the first month was $962.50, and it has now dropped to $959.05. So it's going to drop each month. The interest that you're paying on this loan is going to drop each month because the amount that you're paying interest on is dropping each month. Okay, so now we can take that monthly payment that stays the same through the lifetime of the loan, the $1,715.88. We can subtract the interest payment on that, which we've calculated in this first part, and I've underlined the $959.05, and we're left with $756.83. Okay. That's the amount that's now going towards the principal. So you could tell that the interest on the loan drops each month. The amount paid towards the interest percentage stays the same, but the amount paid on interest drops per month. And the principal, if we compare that to what the principal was on the previous month, you could tell that the principal goes up a bit each month. So the balance of the loan equals the principal balance minus the payment principal, or the principal payment. So we're going to take that $209,246.62 that was left after our first payment. We're going to subtract our second principal payment for it that we just calculated above, and we're going to be left with $208,489.79. So I've got the chart outlined here for the first three payments, and then we jump to payment number 30, then to 125, then to 179 and 180. And here's what we see. Okay. As you can tell, as this loan progresses and ages and we make payments, our interest payment steadily goes down. It started out by paying $962.50 per month in interest, and by the last month, we're only paying $7.82 in interest, and the majority of our payment is going towards principal. Same thing works with the principal. The principal starts out as a smaller payment of $753.88. That's taken out of that monthly payment that goes towards the principal, but by that last month, the majority of your principal is going to, or your majority of your payment is going to principal. And you can tell, obviously, the balance of the loan steadily decreases after each payment. Okay. So here's the bottom line for most financial advisors. Okay. You got to determine what you can afford, because just because you make enough hypothetically to pay a mortgage payment doesn't mean you actually make enough to pay a mortgage payment, because you have other costs that are associated with being alive. Okay, so we want to spend, here's what financial advisors say, I should say. You don't have to go by these guidelines. Not everybody goes by these guidelines, but financial advisors give these guidelines. We want to spend no more than 28% of your gross monthly income for your mortgage payment. And we want to spend no more than 36% of your gross monthly income for your total monthly debt, including mortgage payments, car payments, credit card bills, student loans, and medical debt. That's in a perfect world, obviously. You got to do what you got to do. That's all I'm going to say right there. Especially these days with expensive as everything is, you got to manage your debt as best as possible. So it would be nice if we lived in a perfect world and could go by those percentages and save money here and save money there. And it's good to have goals and goal percentages. And I'm sure this is what financial advisors do recommend. But, you know, it's always good to have guidelines to try to go by. You don't have to be perfect. But let's look at these guidelines and see kind of how they would play out. Let's go from there. So if we look at our gross annual income broken down by how much gross annual income is, about how much you make a year. So we're looking anywhere from $30,000 to $150,000. Okay, so they're saying, based on those percentages I gave you, that if you make $30,000 a year, you should be able to afford a monthly mortgage payment of $700 and a total monthly credit obligation of $900. Now, what that means is that it doesn't mean that you can have a $700 mortgage and then have a $900 car payment. What that technically means from the financial advisors is that you can have a $700 monthly mortgage payment, but you should only have an additional $200 of extra credit obligations, such as a car payment or credit card debt or student loans, right? So your total monthly credit obligations should add up to $900, but $700 of that is going to be your home. Now, if obviously you make $150,000, you could technically afford up to $3,500 a month for a mortgage, and your other monthly credit obligations should only be, should add up totally to $4,500, which means there's only an additional $1,000 that you're spending on car payments or medical bills or credit card debt or student loans. So I find this table interesting, but maybe not altogether completely helpful. But let's look at this question. It says, suppose that your gross annual income is $45,000. What is the maximum amount you should spend each month on a mortgage payment? What is the maximum amount you should spend each month for total credit obligations? If your monthly mortgage payment is 80% of the maximum amount you can afford, what is the maximum amount you should spend each month for all other debt? Round all computations to the nearest dollar. So, let's look at this calculation. Starting with A, the maximum amount you should spend each month on a mortgage payment. With a gross annual income of $45,000, your gross monthly income is $45,000 divided by 12. So this is basically what you're making per month if you're making $45,000 per year. You're making $3,750 a month if you're making $45,000 per year. You should spend no more than 28% of your gross monthly income, which is $3,750 on a mortgage payment. 28% of $3,758 or $50 is $1,050. Okay, so we should spend, if we're making $45,000 a year, by their guidelines, we should have a mortgage payment that is no more than $1,050. Okay, so knowing that, what is the maximum amount you should spend each month for total credit obligations? Well, total credit obligations is that 36% that they talk about. Okay, if I multiply 36% times my monthly income, which is $3,750, then I'm looking at about $1,350 per month for my total credit obligations. Now, keep in mind, I can allocate up to $1,050 of that for just a mortgage itself, which really only leaves me $300 of extra debt going along. Okay, now if our monthly mortgage payment is 80% of the maximum amount that we can afford, what is that monthly payment? And what's the maximum amount that we should spend towards other debt? Now, this means that your monthly mortgage payment is 80% of that $1,050 that we found that we could spend up to here in Part A. Okay, so we're multiplying 80% times 1,050, which means that our mortgage payment is now $850 per month. Okay, in Part B, we saw that your total monthly debt should not exceed $1,350. So because you're already paying $840 for your mortgage payment, this leaves you $1,350 minus the $840 or $510 for all other debt. Your monthly credit obligations, excluding mortgage payments, should not exceed $510. That goes for health care bills, that goes for student loans, that goes for credit cards, car payments, and everything should not exceed $510. Okay, which, reasonable, not reasonable, that's neither here nor there. We're just looking at numbers, guys and gals. And let's look now at renting versus buying. Now, the benefits of renting. Now, with the benefit of renting, we have no down payment or points required. You generally have a security deposit that is returned at the end of your lease. Granted, you don't leave your home a mess or don't mess anything up that they have to take out of your security deposit. You're very mobile. You can easily relocate, moving as often as you like and as your lease permits. Some leases are 6 months, some leases are month to month, some leases are a year. So it just depends on how much your lease permits. You can move around as you like and you're not tied down. You don't have to worry about selling the place. Doesn't tie up hundreds of thousands of dollars that might be invested more safely and lucratively elsewhere. Most financial advisors agree that you should buy a home because you want to live in it, not because you want to fund your retirement. It also does not clutter what you can afford for your total monthly debt with mortgage payments. Now, we're going to look at the benefits, obviously, of renting, but we're also going to look at the benefits of home ownership to kind of give you a vice versa. Okay, so let's look at some more benefits of renting. It may involve lower monthly expenses. You pay rent, whereas a homeowner pays the mortgage, taxes, insurance, and upkeep of the place. It can provide amenities like swimming pools, tennis courts, and health clubs. You can avoid the risk of falling house prices. It does not require home repair, maintenance, or groundkeeping. There are no property taxes and is generally less costly than buying a home when staying in it for fewer than 3 years. Keep that in mind, for fewer than 3 years. All right, but now let's also look at the benefits of home ownership. Home ownership can offer peace of mind and stability, provide significant tax advantages, including deduction of mortgage interest and property taxes. There is no chance of rent increasing over time if you own the home. It allows for freedom to remodel, landscape, and redecorate, which renting may not allow for. You can build up equity, or the difference between the home's value and what you owe on the mortgage as the mortgage is paid off. The possibility of home appreciation is a potential source of cash in the form of a home equity loan. But be careful with home equity loans if you do have to get one. Depending on the lender and how they're set up, they can be kind of shysty. All right, and when looking at 7-year time frames, the total cost of renting, the monthly rent, renter's insurance, loss of potential interest on the security deposit, is more than twice the total cost of buying for homeowners who itemize their tax deductions. So, in the long run, especially if you're staying in one location, a home ownership could be much more beneficial than a renting situation. But if you're moving around a lot, renting may be more beneficial and more cost effective. But like I said, if you're going to be in one location for a long time, especially 7 or more years, home ownership may be the way to go. It all depends on your financial situation and how your budget is lined out. Now this concludes chapter 8.7. Please go on and try to do some of the associated problems with 8.7 and the assignments. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. Y'all have a good one, and I will see you at 8.8.